Hi, Caleb from Brownhouse here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the TriggerTech trigger for the Remington 700. So if you're familiar with like the Remington 700 trigger market at all, you know there's a bunch of different triggers out there. And of course these fit both the actual Remington 700, which we have here, and the clones such as like your Air Precision, Solus, and different things like that. But with all that being said, the TriggerTech triggers, the one I have right here is called the primary. So they come in three main grades. You have your primary, you have your special, and then you have your diamond. And externally, they're all identical, so I only just pulled one for this. The main difference is going to be their pull weight and trigger shoe profile, which I'll open this one in a minute, but you can get them in two shoe profiles. The flat, which is what we have here, and then the curved, which is your more traditional profile. And the primary goes from 1.5 to 4 pounds adjustment range, so you can fine tune it however you want. Then the special is going to go from 1 pound to 3.5 pounds range. And then the diamond is going to be a whopping 4 ounces to 32 ounces. So that one is by far the lightest. And I will note, the lighter in pull weight you get, the more expensive the triggers get. So this one, as far as those are concerned, is the most affordable. The install is easy. They install very similar to a standard Remington 700 trigger. And we'll actually go through how to install one of these as well since we got it here. And let me grab my knife. I'll cut the tape on this one. Alright. Alright, so with this you get the actual trigger itself. And as I mentioned before, this one is the straight shoe. And I prefer it. I like the straight shoe. But as I mentioned, you can also get it in the traditional curved profile as well in all three of those triggers. So you have that. It comes with a cool little TriggerTech Velcro patch that you can put on your patch wall. Or if you're like wear one of those hats, you can wear this on your forehead. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But you also have the full destruction manual here, which is actually, there's a lot going on in here. Also, yeah, I'll mention that as well since I passed up the page here. These triggers are, of course, warranted as long as you don't do anything crazy with them, like try to turn the primary into a diamond, because they are different. All right, they don't just put a lighter pull weight in this one and then sell it as a diamond to be more expensive. They are actually machined differently for that reason. All right, and then I'm trying to get to the, yeah, so they have full set of instructions on how to actually, you know, do the different things and whatnot. But I'll go through it here in case you don't want to read and you'd rather watch. So with that being said, we're going to pull the trigger out of this action here. And as you notice, we already pulled it out of the stock. We took the bolt out. All super easy stuff. So we're just going to jump right to the actual installation. Now, notice that this one here does have a bolt lock release on it. So what we'll have to do is make sure we get that spring and latch back in there. But for removal, we'll just go ahead and knock it out. Now, I will note the removal. Let me grab a pointing tool here. If you notice, you have two pins, one in the back and one in the front. And notice that the safety will cover that pin, okay? So you need to put it on safe before you drive that pin out, because if you drive it out from this way, you will bend or break the actual safety lever on here. So we don't want to do that, so we'll just put it on safe. Hold it in a vise. If you have a barrel vise or something like that, or an action vise, you know, whatever, you can use that too. But we're using the Brownells vise with the micarta padded vise jaws for this. And I'll hold it just like this and kind of turn it a bit so you can see what's going on here. Alright, and then select the right size punch. Yeah, 1/8 should be perfect. And a hammer. I'm just going to use the Delrin brass hammer because that should be plenty to drive this out. The pins are held in by friction, but they shouldn't be in there too terribly tight. Alright, so I drove that back pin out, and that's what was holding in the bolt latch and its spring. Drive that out the rest of the way. Then we can move to the front one. Alright, that one came right out and went straight to the floor. Alright, then you can set your old trigger aside. And I'll install the new one this way, facing upward. Grab my pin off the floor. And if you notice, one pin is shorter than the other. The short one's going to go in front, and the long one's going to go in the back because it also has to go through this bolt lock piece here. Okay, so installing the new trigger, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on safe so I have clear line on the actual hole there. And I'll also note, if you're putting this in a Remington clone that has that bolt lock on the side of the receiver, yours isn't going to have this piece or the spring, so you can just skip messing with this and drive your pins straight in, no problem. And then the latch is still on the side. Honestly, me personally, I just leave it on there, even though it's not in use, because it doesn't get in the way at all. Alright, so we'll just drop this in there. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the short pin and I'm going to drive it in from this opposite side over here. And I'll push it in as far as I can by hand and just tap it a little bit until it gets close to that hole there. Alright, so it's through the other side, and it's right up against the end there, but not protruding through that hole, which is perfect. That's all you need. And then taking your bolt lock piece, if you notice, there's this little lip on the back end here. Actually, let me put it over here so you can kind of see what's going on. You'll see this little lip. What that does is it hooks underneath this piece on the trigger, and this is what actually pushes it. You can see it kind of working there just like that. Alright, so now what we need to do is take this spring. The way this spring is going to go in here is going to be kind of just like this here, and let me pull it out so I can show you how it's oriented here. So what it's going to do is kind of sit on there just like this. So this hook in the back is going to grab into the receiver, and this front piece here is going to be what applies tension to it. So if we hook this under, lay it down, take this little claw right here, if you will, this 90-degree angle, we're going to hook that down into where the body of the trigger goes. And once I get it in there, I'll give you I'll turn it so you can see that a little bit better. But what we're going to do now is take our pin, and if you notice, one side of the pin is beveled, the other side is flat. Go beveled in first, because that's going to help align everything. So just push down on the spring. And if you need to, you can come from the opposite side with the punch to help line things up. But if you get it going there, you can push it through. And you'll most likely hit a little bit of resistance. You'll have to hammer it in. The trick here is to not go crazy and start hammering real hard, because if your trigger's not aligned properly, you're going to hit the corner of the hole, and you're going to risk damaging something that's you can't repair. Alright, so now that that's lined up and it's going in, we'll just hammer it in the rest of the way. So just go until it's flush against the bolt lock there. Just like that. And then to function check it here, just push down and it should spring back up. Let's see if we might need a little bit of oil on that there. And we can certainly do that. Alright, and that's all there is to it. That looks pretty good there. Alright. And from here, oh, I told you I was gonna show you how that spring goes in there. And that's where it hooks in to the actual like housing area right there. So yours should look just like that. And if it does, it's installed correctly. Okay, now the last thing you need to do is a function check. Make sure the safeties are working properly and everything like that. So we'll install it just like so. It's on fire currently. And of course it fires. And you actually just need to lift it. You don't need to run the full length of it. Switch it to safe, and it should not fire. And another thing I like to do is I like to put it in the stock, put it on fire with it cocked, and just bump the end of the stock on the ground. And that's another safety check I do. I do that on fire and on safe. Alright, so now to adjust it, the adjustment itself is that screw on the bottom. And it has a little picture there, so it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, right? So if you make it tighter, or you turn clockwise, then that makes the trigger pull heavier. And these particular triggers, so the primary is my go-to for, like, let's say a hunting rifle, because I like my hunting triggers to be roughly around 3 pounds. I don't usually like to go lighter than that on hunting rifles, but it's personal preference. The way it comes right here, there's nice and tactile clicks. It comes kind of close to flush, and they come from the factory somewhere close to between that pull weight range. So this one's probably a roughly 2.5 pound trigger. So you can actually back off just a little bit. Let's say like 6 clicks or so, and that should get me kind of close to the 3 pound range. If you don't have one, I'd recommend investing in a trigger pull gauge. They're relatively cheap, and they're made by a variety of manufacturers. Of course, Brownells has them. But if you're doing any kind of trigger work at all, one of those is definitely worth having. Now, that's all there is to it. And I'll also mention, you can get TriggerTech triggers that are 2-stage. Now, if you have one of the 2-stage triggers, this screw right here is your first stage adjustment, and the second stage screw would be right here on the actual trigger shoe itself. Excuse me. But we don't have one of those here today. But if you have one, that's how you adjust it. If you don't know anything about single stage or 2-stage triggers, what's the difference, whatever, we have content out on that, so go check that out. It's really good, and it gives you all the details. So, as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to post them down below. And if you need help with anything for any reason ever, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, as well as that notification bell for more gunsmithing type tips. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.